Welcome to the Optimal Sales Mindset Podcast, where I share some thoughts and feelings from my journey through sales, starting out as a door-to-door salesman, moving to my own healing journey, and then eventually becoming a therapist and a mindset coach who primarily works with salespeople. And I want to share the things that can help you, salespeople, not only sell better, but feel better and live better lives. So let's dive in. Something I've been feeling lately is that sales is full of way too much stress. It's full of too much suffering, too much worrying, too much tension, too much burnout. And all of those things are rampant in sales. It doesn't matter if you're in door-to-door or any facet of sales. You've seen or experienced some of those things I've named personally. And what I've come to see is that all sales is really doing is it's highlighting these human tendencies or these human patterns that we have to do things that stress us out and that make us sick. And sales just happens to be an environment that really exposes those. Now, that's a huge problem if we're trying to avoid those things. If we're trying to just stay comfortable all the time, and if we don't want to take a look at the things happening on the inside that might be lowering our quality of life and especially our quality of sales. So if we're trying to avoid all that, then yeah, it's sales is our enemy. And that's often how it feels. You wake up in the morning and your body, your whole system feels like you're about to fight an enemy. It's relating to sales as that, as something you have to fight and it's hard and you have to overcome it. And it doesn't have to be that way. And what I've seen is that we can use sales because of how it exposes our stuff, our baggage. We can use it to work on ourselves. We can use it to let go of the parts of us that are feeling triggered or bothered or uncomfortable by certain things. In door-to-door, what you'll probably see exposed is a part of you that is uncomfortable with rejection. Doesn't like when people yell at it or when they're upset with you or they feel like you're being annoying. So you notice this part of you that feels really small and wants to shrink in those moments. It wants you to flee. You may notice a part of you exposed that is uncomfortable with the idea of failure. And so every morning you wake up with a pit in your stomach, with that jitters of how's it going to go today? Am I going to sell today? What if I don't sell today? During the day, if you haven't gotten the sell quick enough under your belt, you'll notice feeling more and more stressed. Eventually that turns to frustration and discouragement and hopelessness. But it's all just exposing this part of you that's uncomfortable with failure. It's afraid of it. It also might expose if you're in a leadership position, especially if you're in a leadership position, or if you're an experienced rep, or even if you have high expectations as a first-year rep, you'll see a part of you exposed that is uncomfortable with falling short in the eyes of others. It makes up this story of how much you need to sell, who you need to be, or how others need to perceive you, and then measures you according to those expectations. And you feel that in the form of pressure and of tension and stress. And these are just a few examples. You might see other things exposed too, like maybe a part of you that has a hard time or is uncomfortable with monotonous, consistent work. And you'll notice your motivation fluctuating, right? So there's all these different parts of us, these different feelings inside us that get exposed by this job. And thankfully so, because without something exposing them, we wouldn't know they're there. We wouldn't know what to do with them. And what I'd like to explore in this podcast later on is where all that comes from. I want to talk about where these different feelings or parts of us, where we get them from and why we pick them up or keep them inside us. And also what we can do to let them go and to heal, to process and release those feelings and those beliefs that don't serve us anymore. Because I know one thing we connect on as humans is that neither of us want to live in this one life we get. We don't want to be limited by our past stuff, by our past conditioning. And what we really want is to be free of that so we can live a life where we're free to be ourselves, to have the courage to be ourselves, where we're free to be confident, to be happy no matter what, to enjoy these precious moments that we get. I know we connect on that level as humans because that's what we all want. And that's what we're trying to get, with all the different things we do. It's why we exercise every day. It's why we try affirmations or journaling, or why we, invest in courses and programs. And like, we're all pursuing the same thing, and that is to be free of the stuff that pulls us down. And man, my story is one of not knowing how to be free at all. And, experiencing having success in a lot of areas only to fall, only to have the things I hadn't dealt with just pull me down to a place that was very scary and difficult, and that forced me to finally really take a look inside and to go on my own journey of healing and discovery. But my story is also that of what happens when one does that. And it's the story of what happened when I discovered, thanks to all the things that were exposed that I had been carrying, I discovered that I wasn't that stuff. I wasn't the parts of me that were uncomfortable or afraid of things. I wasn't my emotions or thoughts. I wasn't my brain. I discovered that who I really am, is much deeper than all of that. And I learned through experience that those things aren't me. They're just things I'm observing. And the less identified I can be with them, and the more I can relate to them as there's this feeling happening, or there's this thought happening, and it's just something happening. The more I started to relate to my inner world like that, the lighter I became, the freer I became, and in becoming every day. Because every day, my whole focus now is to use life as my sensei, to welcome its lessons, to invite it to expose in me the parts of me that need healing, that need help, that are limited, that are stuck carrying fears and insecurities from the past. And what I've found for me is that this mindset, it has just allowed me to live life in this state of win-win. Because when everything is going great, when it's going according to my preferences or how I hope, then great, it feels easy. But when things aren't going that way, when they're hard, when they're difficult, when there's just heaviness and anxiety and insecurity happening inside me or passing through me, it's also a win, because it's an opportunity for me to accept, to process, to release, or it feels more accurate to say to allow those things to process and release. And so that's been my journey. And it's what led me to become a therapist and a coach. It's what's led me to adhere and dive into ancient wisdom traditions and spirituality, because they all are saying the same thing. Psychology, spirituality, the ancient texts, the latest science, it's all saying the same thing. And that is that we don't have to be limited by our brain's conditioned thoughts and emotions and our conditioned baggage. We can learn that. We are bigger than all of it, and we can learn to rise above that. And I'm so excited to share in this podcast more of how each of these different areas are all pointing to that same truth. And it's pretty amazing. It's been amazing for me to realize that. And man, it has made sales so much easier. Although I'm not in door-to-door sales anymore, I am in sales, and everything we do is related to sales. And this way of viewing sales, viewing it as my sensei, using it to work on myself and to heal, hoping that it exposes what needs my attention, has changed everything. Because, when the deals are working out, it's a win. And when I'm able to serve people and bring value, it's a win. But even when they're not, and when people feel like that I'm not the right fit, or when my program isn't what they need, that even that is a win, because it allows me to work with the parts of me that have a problem with that are attached to an outcome other than reality. And something I've also been feeling is that so much of our suffering in sales and life is when we're attached to an outcome other than reality, or when we're attaching to an outcome that's in the future, which is outside of reality, because reality is right now. And so the more present we can be, the more we can learn to stop getting so lost in our head in these thoughts and emotions, stop letting these parts of us dictate how we view life or how we feel. And if instead we can learn to more fully inhabit the present moment as our true self, call it what you want, call it our soul, our higher self, our divine self, our uh, self capital S. I don't know. There's so many words that describe this, but the more we can be connected to who we really are inside, who that presence, that us that's always been in there since we were little kids and is still in there now, the more we can connect to that, the better everything becomes, the better everything gets. And the better we sell, the better we connect with customers because we're connected to ourselves. Our customers sense that instead of sensing that we're really lost in our heads and just trying to use them as an object. When we're connected to ourself, capital S, people feel that and we feel that. And so something I've been feeling is that it's time in sales to start connecting more to our self, capital S. It's time to use sales as the very vehicle that helps us do that because it exposes all of the things inside us that aren't us, but are just things that we've been carrying, things that we're noticing, right? If you think about it, you're not choosing the emotions and thoughts that or insecurities that arise. They're just happening. If you pay attention, you'll see that. And if you pay even more attention, and if you keep hanging out with me on this podcast and keep practicing observing, then what you'll also see is that you don't have to get as lost in that stuff as you are. You don't have to give it as much power as you are. And learning to do that is going to benefit. Yeah, it's not only going to help you sell through the roof, but it's going to help you better handle the highs and the lows. It's going to help you better handle relationships, and the list could go on. So, if anything, maybe what wanted to come through on this episode is that sales is the ultimate vehicle for our growth. It is your sensei. So use it in that way. Invite it to expose in you the anxieties, the fears, the insecurities, the feelings, the unhelpful habits that it's time for you to look at and let go of. And do your best to change your swing. Instead of suppressing them or instead of using compulsive or addictive habits to avoid looking inside, look inside because it's going to help you live the life you want to live, which is one where you're free of the stuff that's being exposed. And the only way for that to happen is for you to look at it and to work at it, to work with it. So, welcome to the podcast. And I hope you'll stay tuned in. I will keep sharing what I wish I would have known. Rooting for you on your journey in sales and in life. And thank you so much for listening. You just listened to another episode of Optimal Sales Mindset, where we have explored some things that could help you not only sell better, but feel better so that you can live better. My invitation is that you take a moment after this episode, before moving on to the next thing, take a moment to pause and just notice what calls to you the most from this last episode. What stands out? What would you like to apply? Rooting for you. Thanks again.